the Keighley and Worth Valley Railway. It's been snaking the 5 miles southwest of Oxenhope ever since it was built in the 1860s. 100 years later, British Rail closed the line, but a dedicated group of volunteers brought it back to life. They were one of the first preservation groups to run their own railway, and the Worth Valleys thrived ever since.
It's a complete branch line. The whole line has been preserved. So we run from here in Keighley, where we are at the moment, which connects with the main line system, several hundred feet up into the Pennine village of Oxenhope, on the way going through Haworth with, of course, all the Bronte connections there. We've got stations like this, which has got that urban feel. As I say, we share it with Network Rail, so you've got all the mainline services coming in. So you get the feel of a busy town station. And then contrast that with somewhere like Oakworth, which is obviously famous for the railway children connection, in that sort of the classic tranquil branch line station with flower beds and the clock ticking and the gas lights hissing. So it's that complete contrast, all in one very tight, short line.
Later we'll be climbing onto the footplate of one of Britain's oldest working locomotives. But first, let's see where we're heading. Like any steam loco, standard tank engine 80,002 can find the steep climb out of Keighley a real struggle. It's a 1 in 58 gradient and quickly curves through a full 90 degrees. In the old days, if the rails were wet, goods trains needed to take a run at it from beyond the station. Today, it's still a real test for the men and women who drive and fire the railway's elderly engines. At 5 miles, the line's short, but it's sharp. It's a breathless start to the journey. A panting climb out of Keighley, past the Globe Public House to the summit. None of the line's easy.
I think the main characteristic of the Keighley and Worth Valley is, although we're a short line, only 5 miles in length, it's very, very steep, and it climbs 335 feet in just under 5 miles. So I think the interest, in addition, we have 6 stations, the interest is that there's a lot of hard work in between stations. And obviously with some of the larger trains, there's quite a fair amount of sweating for the fireman to do. So we have to be on top of the job all the time. As you come out of Keighley, you've got a 1 in 58 gradient, but it's on a tight curve with a check rail. And in the wet, that is a real challenge for most of the locomotives that we operate. Once you get above Keighley, you run into Ingrow, which of course has the superb Vintage Carriages Trust Museum and the Harmless Loco Society, and the restored station building from Folridge.
Out of Ingrow Tunnel, we'll be leaving the chimneys behind and heading for the countryside. And there'll be a chance to sniff the fresh Pennine air of the Worth Valley. With just a few huffs and puffs, we'll be journeying back 150 years. Welcome to Damems, and the smallest station in Britain. It was built to serve a mill close by, and the platform's never been longer than the length of a single coach. Today, Damems is a request station, and most passengers ignore its cheerful welcome and hurry straight through. Damems Junction, the passing point for the locos running in opposite directions on this single-track railway. Halfway along the journey, it's often one of the busiest places on the line. The Keighley and Worth Valley is already familiar to millions as the backdrop to the film The Railway Children. And today you'll still see the line scrub up to take a major role on TV. One of the real stars of the railway children was Oakworth Station, and it's been left much as it was when the cameras moved on. An elderly leading lady still basking in the limelight. Heading out of Oakworth, the sprint to Bronte country will take us through Mytham's Tunnel. 75 yards of soot and sweat. Everyone's heard of Haworth, and everyone wants to pay a visit. It's proved a real honeypot for tourists and brought the railway some useful business.
In the early 1960s, I don't think the people who were involved with the original preservation of the line would have expected it to become a tourist railway. It was expected to become a line for local people getting to and from work, as it was in the early 60s. No one, I don't think, could have predicted at that time the way tourism would take off. And obviously Haworth has always had associations with the Brontes. It's always been a tourist destination. But I think we've added to that, and we can actually bring people in without using cars. And so it's really it's changed over the years, adapted with as society's changed.
At Haworth, it's time to swap crews and head off past the Worth Valley's loco works. There's a mile to go now, and as we'll see, a chance to steam through some of the most attractive scenery on the whole line. Oxenhope and the end of the line.
The next train to depart from the platform is the 12:45 Worth Valley steam service for Keighley. This train covers Haworth, Oakwood, Ingrow West and Keighley, and also at the men's station by the crest of the Down. For the next departure, the 12:45.
Time now to meet the engine that'll be taking us on the 5-mile trip out of Keighley.
Well, this is a locomotive that's known as an Ironclad. It was called that because it was built, or the design was introduced at about the time that the British Navy were starting to build the Ironclad battleships. So you've got wonderful ships called Agamemnon and Leviathan and Devastation being built at the same time as this. And the reason it was called that is because it really is built like the proverbial brick privy. It's very, very solid. It was built for hauling coal over the Pennines between the pits in Lancashire and the docks at Goole and the Yorkshire pits and the docks over towards Liverpool way. And this particular machine was built by the Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway. It was one of about 300 that were built, and they started building them in 1876. It's designed by Kitson of Leeds, who supplied them to the Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway. And this is from the last batch, built by Bear Peacock and Company of Manchester, built in 1887. It was sent originally to Wakefield Shed, and then it spent its whole life running between Wakefield and Goole and over to Burnley and places like that, carrying coal from Yorkshire and Lancashire. It was chance really that she survived in Wakefield. She was withdrawn from, or her sister, there were two of them at Wakefield Shed, and her sister was withdrawn in 1952, and at that time 957, she was then 52044, British Railways 52044, she was sent to Horwich Works, and we think the best bits of the two engines were put into one. Certainly this one, 957, picked up the tender, for example, off her sister. The sister was scrapped and this was sent back to Wakefield, and the only reason that she survived at Wakefield was that they had some very difficult colliery sidings to shunt, and they needed a light engine to do it, and that's why this beastie survived. And she was withdrawn from service in 1959. She was very little used towards the end, but we've often wondered whether or not she was kept in the hope that somebody would preserve her. And a chap called Tony Coax, with enormous foresight, who at one time was the secretary of the railway here, He bought her privately. It was only the second steam engine ever to be bought privately in the country. And he parked her in various spots around the country for 6 years until the Worth Valley started to collect locomotives, and then she came here in March 1965. But I think it was more chance than anything that she survived. In heritage terms, she is unique. As I say, there are one or two others dotted around the country, but of the northern railways, which were the real users of the 060 coal engine, of which this is very much one for hauling coal, this really is the survivor of the northern goods engine, and it's of inestimable value, and we're very, very proud of having it here. One of the reasons that they are so rare is that everybody went out in the 1950s and 1960s and bought glamorous engines like Scotsman and Princess Elizabeth and things like that. And nobody thought to save any of these. And the National Collection, for example, hasn't got anything like this, whereas it's got lots and lots of glamorous passenger engines. So the personality now is a sort of smiling old lady, I think, saying, thank goodness I've been saved. This was a branch line of the Midland Railway. The Midland Railway operated between Bournemouth and Southend in the south, right up to Port Patrick and Stranraer in the north. It was a huge organisation, branch line out to Swansea. And ironically enough, the Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway in this part of the world was actually very, very strong. Its main line ran about 8 miles away through Hebden Bridge, but it never got into this valley. This was very much the Midlands side of the Pennines, and the other side of the Pennines, 8 miles away, was the Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway side of the Pennines. And so it's quite ironic, really, that although topographically and geographically, when you see her running in the Worth Valley, it looks absolutely right. You've got this wonderful greenness, this verdant nature of the valley, and that's very, very characteristic of the Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway's main line and its Pennine branches. In fact, it never ran here, and it would be just as accurate to have a Great Western engine running here, or a Southern engine, but in terms of what it looks like and just the feel and the atmosphere, it's absolutely perfect. I fell in love with her, I think, when I was a kid in 1965 around the back of Keighley Station when I first saw her. She was everything that a steam engine should be to a small kid. It had a big chimney and a dome and not much cab. And indeed, she was very much like the Midland Railway steam engines that used to work up here when I was a boy, the 2Fs and the 3Fs. And so I identify very strongly with her. It was just a most moving experience to see this lump of metal that hadn't run for nearly 30 years come into life, and knowing that I'd had such a close hand in doing it with other people. There were lots of other people helped us, but it really was a most moving experience. And even now, when you go out on her, I don't go out on her by any means every time she goes out, but I like to go out on her a lot. And when you do, I still sometimes get a lump in my throat and think, you know, yeah, it was worth it, and I'm really glad we went through it, but gosh, it was hard work.
Plenty of water, plenty of steam, ready for the climb out of Keighley. Leaving Keighley now, we've got to climb up about 1 in 58 up to the Globe pub. And it's on a bit of a curve, so it makes it a little bit harder for the engine. Makes it feel a bit steeper than what it is, so you can actually hear the engine working as we come out of Keighley. of noise because we're climbing now. Once we get up to the globe, it'll level out a bit. So what I'll do then, once we get onto the level, wind it back a bit, the gearing, and that just uses less steam, so it'll make less noise as we get on the level. Once we get to Ingrow, it starts to climb again, so you hear it going again, you know. But this, you hear an Ingrow about the two steepest bits on the line.
Looking for any holes in the fire, any bright spots in the fire. Proves the fire's very thin. So we fill the bright spots up to keep the whole grate covered. That's how the engine likes to be worked. Keeps a nice even heat all over the firebox.
Winding the reverser back a bit, in simple terms, it's just like changing gear on a car. So as the gradient's ironing out, we're just going into a higher gear basically. More economical, uses less steam, makes it a bit easier for the firemen. 957 Lancashire Yorkshire engine, one of the oldest on the railway. So it only comes out on rare occasions, special occasions, so quite on it today, to be honest. Steams well. Day like today, absolutely lovely. Bit of a sod on a cold winter's day, but today, excellent. Coming up to Ingrow now, so I'll be shutting off shortly. Tell the fireman I'm shutting off. He'll open the blower so we don't get a blowback. Open these doors, and he'll probably put a pump on to get some water into the boiler. Shutting off then.
Into Ingrow West station now, which is it's the home of both the Vintage Carriages Trust, where the carriages belong, and it's also the home of the Bahamas Locomotive Society. So we'll stop here and pick whatever passengers up for travelling with us, and then we're away straight into the tunnel, then into Ingrow Tunnel.
This is Ingrow Station. There were two stations at Ingrow, Ingrow East and Ingrow West. We're about 1.5 miles from Keighley now, surrounded by mills. The railway was built in the 1860s to bring coal in and take the finished wool out. And it was built by people who owned the mills to do that. It was all to help with their business. The railway's just under 5 miles long, and we're about a fifth of the way along it here. Right away.
Right away. we leave the other end of this, the line starts to climb again. About 1 in 46, something like that. So you'll hear the engine working again, one of the steepest parts of the line. Yeah, it doesn't look that steep, but it's steeper than coming out of Keighley this bit. You can see now she's having to work a bit harder, so it is going to put a fair gradient.
Adjusting the lubricator, which puts oil into the cylinders and the valve chest and the cylinders. It's a hydrostatic lubricator. It just gives a blob of oil about every 30 seconds. You can watch it rise up through the glass. So that's literally lubricating the front end of the engine.
Now, smallest station on the line. We don't automatically stop here. We only stop here if the guard requests us, so the passenger has to stop. Shut off, mate.
Righto.
I'll shut off here because the next signal ahead, it keeps it at danger until he hears the engines shut off. And that's because the signal in front of that's at danger. So it's like a warning to me, just to be ready to close.
This is called Damens Junction, which is a dead Swiss because it's not a junction at all. But anywhere on the Midland Railway that had a place where the tracks diverged, they called it a junction, so that's why it's called Damens Junction, because this used to be part of the Midland Railway. We're in the middle of the line here, almost exactly halfway, and to be in either half you have to have a huge big brass key that opens the points in that half. And we've arrived here, we've handed our key over to the signalman here, and he'll then put that through an electronic locking machine that unlocks his signals and lets the other train that's just arriving now into the other half, and he'll take that key, and then we'll take back the key that he's just handed in, we'll get now for that end of the line. But it's all locked electrically, so that it's physically impossible for us to get into that half as long as there's a train up there.
That token is our authority to be in any section of track. So without that we couldn't operate any points or anything. So once we get that, we get to Oxenhope at the other end, we've got a key then to run round. Without that, we couldn't. The points would be just set. Thank you. Right, mate. Got the road. We'll get off. You let the handbrake off, David.
I was brought up with steam right from a very early age, really from being in a pushchair. My dad was involved with preserving a railway engine, buying it from British Railways when it was withdrawn, and I've been involved ever since. Suppose it's in your blood. All my friends, everyone that I'm involved with really, as we've grown up together through steam. So I think once you've got it, it's there forever.
You just got to strip down here a bit because we've got a 15-mile-an-hour speed restriction. Well, we're coming to Oakwood Station, which is famous for, obviously, for the railway children, for the television and the motion picture. So quite a lot of people know Oakwood, very popular station. I think people are still hoping to see Jenny Agutter when they get here, but she didn't often come. So it's actually been left as it was for the film, and it's sort of Edwardian with all the signs and that. It looks very nice. I mean, every time it's shown on the television, it's normally around about Christmas time, you get a surge in passenger figures. So it's done a lot for the railway. Probably one of the best things that could have happened to the railway in its early days. I think people will always come, but you've got a generation now who were never brought up with steam engines. And so you're dependent on them seeing, you know, happy stories like the railway children, and then they bring them in and say, oh look, there's a steam engine, that's what was on the railway children, you know. A lot of children these days haven't seen a piece of coal.
This engine was actually used in the filming of the Railway Children, so you know, this engine and this section of the railway go very well together.
The engine was painted green for the film. It's black as you can see today, but it was called the Green Dragon in the Railway Children film, and it was cobbled together. It was really patched up with elastoplast and string. We keep finding bits of the green paint underneath it. Where we're passing just now, this is the famous place where Jenny Agutter waved her red knickers at the train to stop it when the landslide had happened. And this is actually the engine that set the landslide off. Back in 1971 it was now. If
at the end of the film, when Father's appearing out of the smoke, somebody's closing the level crossing. Well, that's a 15-year-old me.
Howard Station now, which more or less is the main station on the line. It's where everything's based, where the local shed's based. Yeah, as we leave Howard on the left-hand side, going out, you'll see the engine shed. You'll see all the engines in the yard and that. It's our base where everything's maintained.
We're actually not in Haworth proper here. Haworth itself is about half a mile away on top of the hill behind me. That's where the church is and where the Brontes live. The Bronte family, the famous novelists, lived there. And the station was built here fairly obviously to be next to the railway. And when the railway came along here, people came to live round it. It was a little bit like a Victorian commuter effect, like the effect when they electrify a railway now. People go to live near the stations. Well, the same thing happened here.
Right away, mate. Towards what they call Oxenhope Strait shortly. This is my favourite part of the line, the river and that sort of meandering down the side. It's my favourite spot. I said to my wife when I die, I want my ashes put in the firebox and scattered up here. waving at steam engines. I used to do that myself when I was a kid, so now when I see kids, I like to wave at them. I know it used to give me a thrill when a driver waved at us, you know.
It's almost a recreation of Edwardian England, is this? The long, hot afternoon of empire. All these people that you can see here, there's loads of them about, they can actually see it doing what it was built to do. If it's in a museum, it's like trying to explain to a kid what a stuffed badger is. Just the same with a steam engine. When you see this, kids can understand it, people can understand why they did what they did and how they did it. But if it's stuffed in a museum, it's just a piece of metal sculpture.
Shut off, mate. In Oxenhope now, this is the end of the line, the terminus. We've got a brass band playing for us. Very nice. No, believe it or not, I did want to stop at that line. With having 3 coaches on, it's just the ideal weight for this little engine, you know. Any more and you'd be pushing it a bit, but just with these 3 coaches and the weather today, it's just been perfect, you know. What more would you ask for? Nice weather, nice engine, yeah.
The Keighley and Worth Valley Railway always welcomes new volunteers. Please contact the railway at Haworth Station or visit their website for more information.